Hello and welcome to the Curious Life podcast. I'm Yana Firestone and I'm so excited to have one of my favorite podcasters of all time, which is a big call because I listen to a lot.
I was like, wow,
Yeah,
me?
on the
Man,
mantle. It's
amazing.
Ryan Bailey.
I'm gonna flop. I'm gonna flop this hard now. This is too much praise.
You couldn't do it if you tried, Ryan. You
Oh,
couldn't do it if you
trust
tried.
trust me. I could. I could. We'll see. We'll see.
Well, I'm so excited. You were on the show. I mean, it's a couple of years ago now, during the height of Scandival.
Yeah.
And then very generously, you had me on your show, I think at the end of last year, maybe
Yeah. Which was great.
December.
Great conversation. Yeah.
Oh, I could have kept going for hours. You know, obviously, we're obsessed with the same things. So there's always plenty to talk about.
I know. I know. I wish it would slow down.
I know. It actually does feel like there's an onslaught of content at the moment, and I'm finding it hard to sort of keep on top of everything.
Yeah, no, I mean, 2025, I think just with actual life and then media life, they are neck and neck right now. And the craziness of the real world is almost, makes these reality shows pale in comparison. I keep thinking, like I'll see
Yeah.
something crazy on a reality TV show and then you'll look at actual life and you'll be like, wow, it's almost crazier than the reality television I talk about.
It's so true. And look, your year started off insane with the LA wildfires. How is everything over there?
Well, it's raining right now. It's been, thank God, but yeah. I mean, I had sinus surgery on the 30th, so I was out of it, and then the fire started the next, I think, a week and a half later, and so it was a really rough start to 2025. And we were good, but it's there's just so much destruction out here, and it's just so sad and overwhelming, and one of those things that obviously we'll get through, but it's going to take years to rebuild certain areas of California right now. Hey,
Absolutely.
happy podcast, you guys. We're starting strong.
Oh, look, grief and trauma, it's my jam, Ryan. I just can't
Yeah.
help I can't help going there. But there is, as you said, there's so much going on politically, the world. There's just it feels like a really heavy,
Yeah.
heavy start. And, then I think the fires kind of was just like almost like evidence that, oh yeah, things are really fucked up. And maybe this is the
Yeah,
intention.
a real kick in the nuts
Yeah, yeah.
to start everything with of just like, man, the outside is feeling like my insides and everything is on fire. And you then have like this glut of, amazing content to talk about and watch, but you're sitting there watching it thinking about the actuality of life and where we go from here, which is so intense and
Yeah.
deep, which is, I think a byproduct of some of these shows is that you get into these phases of looking at your life like a reality show, which is so sick, but you're like, oh, the storylines are really bad so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, this episode is part of the series I do called Pop Therapy. And you know that I'm a therapist. And like you, I can't help breaking down the human behavior behind all of these shows that we have been so hooked on for so long. And you and I are OG consumers of this genre. And I think it's really interesting to watch these things unfolding, and you just can't help but put it in perspective in your own life. And it's been interesting for me to see how that has shifted. It used to be that this was pure entertainment and joy and escapism, and that real life was actually kind of real life. And that was just kind of wacky, unreal stuff. And now it feels like that's the safe place,
I know.
you know?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. It's wild. It's our actual lives. And I also kind of argue with myself too, is that I don't know if that's just also part of the process of getting older. I think about it differently than when I was in my 20s or when I was in my 30s, and life, has more responsibility and you experience tragedy in your personal life. So you obviously come at these shows differently. But having said all that, I think in America, especially, it is really such a, smoke. I keep saying smoke them if you got them. It seems like, wow, just anything's possible. Like aliens probably are here at this point. Like who knows? And we would be kind of fascinated by the aliens for like a week. And then
Yeah.
we'd move on to the next thing. Like we'd be like, okay, well, cool, cool. Like we are so used to, we rationalize the most bizarre things. And I can't tell if that's also a byproduct of what we consume on television.
Yeah, well, maybe what would happen is we'd find out they were real and we'd kind of be into it. Then the news cycle would move on. Then the aliens would get a reality show and then we'd
Yeah,
be in.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. I feel like we'd see the aliens and then we would like critique the aliens. Like, you know
Yes.
what? They looked a lot cooler in the movie Aliens.
Yeah.
These not, I don't really
Yeah.
necessarily like these aliens. Like, I feel like we would judge them harshly and they
Yeah.
potentially wouldn't want anything to do with us.
Totally. Like if I was invading a country or a planet, I wouldn't do it that way. I think I would probably come at it this way. And, maybe they need to get some tips from this guy.
Well, I mean, in all, I mean, we really could already have aliens on these reality shows, and we wouldn't know. I mean, there is something so bizarre about, Bravo Housewives or Tom Sandoval, where you're like, you could make an argument that potentially aliens are already here.
Well, prove that it's not,
Yeah, exactly.
you
Yeah,
know?
proof. Yeah, the entire cast of Vanderpump Rules are aliens. You'll find out one
Totally.
day.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I heard you with Brian Moylan talking about this with Salt Lake. I mean, that is
Yeah,
that is the ultimate alien scenario.
yeah. Salt Lake is truly, I think, unique, even within the Housewives, confines. Is that each one of those ladies they work on such a bizarre different level and it has this backdrop of religion all Mormon especially but all Judaism, Christianity, all of these different, and it also just you can just tell their youth, their trauma in their youth have given, I don't know, man, it's also a show built on people that have obviously watched reality show performances growing up and were shaped by them.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing about these ladies, each one of them, they will get so upset and it'll be like DEFCON 9, and then like 10 minutes later, everything's fine. Like
Yeah.
Meredith Marks will be like, "You're fired, get out of here," and then she'll be like, "Well, that's very funny. Thank you so much." Like she'll smile and act like nothing just happened 10 minutes ago. So you're legitimately confused and horrified,
Yeah.
but it's like a car crash you can't turn away from because it is they've found this magic formula that it is so entertaining. Each one of those ladies, even the ones that I don't particularly am drawn to, I still appreciate because they fill this kind of archetypal role that you usually see in like the theater.
Yeah.
I'm like, I said to Brad, I said I could see this as a Broadway musical one day, just Salt Lake City itself,
A
the
hundred
Housewives.
percent. 100%, and I completely agree with you. I don't think, and this is where that comparison and that reflection on your own life and behavior comes into it. For me, I'm always looking at these people and thinking, God, like I could never let go of things like that. If somebody
Yeah.
pissed me off to the point where
Oh,
I'm standing up and like,
I'm I'm still
losing it.
holding grudges from like the age of 2,
Me
like, and
too.
they're able to like throw to. I'm like, how would you ever even talk to this person ever
Yeah.
again? And it's presented as these are the bonds of sisterhood and friendship, and I'm like, these are not the bonds of
No.
sisterhood. There is no way. But we normalize this where we're like, okay, well, maybe you do completely backstab, cheat, lied on your friend. Like maybe that is
Yeah.
how you operate within a friendship. And because they pass it off really like, like we're a sisterhood now, and this is what we've been forged by fire. And I'm no, you were just made fun of online. You were not
Yeah.
forged by fire into a group.
It's so true. The perspective again, you were just made fun of online. You're 100% right. But I think you said something really interesting a moment ago, which is that we're seeing all of these new cast members who are considerably younger than probably you and me, a lot of them, and they were raised on these shows.
Yeah.
This is totally different. I hadn't thought of it like that than the original shows that we were watching 20 years ago when this stuff didn't exist. So we've got a completely different breed of talent that didn't exist in the same way. So what
Yeah.
happens next? Where does this evolution go?
I mean, that's what's it's gonna. I always say that we're eventually going to see a real life murder on one of these housewife shows. Like
Yeah.
where do we go if the intensity keeps ramping up and we expect these Scandival level events? The audience is then disappointed when you don't have Scandival level events and they want to make a Scandival level event. And reality television, especially Bravo, I think always works really well in the fact that it depends on us, the user, the viewer, second screen technology.
Yeah.
That is like we're there commenting the whole time and we're shaping the narrative. We're creating fights between these women or these reality show stars where, they're talking about our podcast now as storylines. They're talking about, and it's really kind of weirdly sad to see because you're like, I don't want any of the outside, what we do online to affect what we see on television. But it seems like that is now the big thing in a lot of these shows.
Yeah, if you take away the podcast storyline, there would not be much left in each series. Really. That's
Yeah.
the crux of most of the, at least every series seems to open with some argument about what someone said on a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or
Well, and like, it's sometimes I enjoy it, but then sometimes it can get overused like anything. And you're just like, oh my God, you're going to bring up a podcast and these people are offended by what you have to catch up the viewer because,
yeah,
most viewers aren't listening to the podcast. So
yeah,
it's this other thing that they are like personalizing themselves. And it's a really, podcasts didn't exist when Real Housewives of Orange County premiered, close to 20 years ago. And
yeah,
I always say, if you went back and watched that first season, it almost now looks like a documentary. It looks
totally.
like, I was like, wow, this could be an Academy Award like documentary compared to what it is now with the high res cameras and
Yeah,
the insane music leading you into each moment. It is
yeah.
so much more produced. And I don't mean that necessarily in a bad way because we've seen like the Salt Lake finale last season was so brilliant in terms of the editing and the music.
Mm.
It's just so different from how it started.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we just have to roll with it, don't we? I mean, I'm still watching. It's not,
Well, there's nothing we can do. I mean, like
no.
we can say like, oh, get it back to the old days, but they don't, they don't really listen. I mean, they'll be like, oh, fire this cast member, and people are like, oh, fire Lisa Barlow or fire this.
Yeah.
They're not going to fire Lisa Barlow because, 100 people on Twitter said to fire Lisa Barlow. They want to keep us upset. There's a rage economy with all of these shows that if they can get us upset, they are doing their job.
Yes, I think it was you that got me thinking about that, because I was definitely one with a pitchfork for many, many years when I was like really activated, to borrow a term from Lindsay Hubbard, by any of these people on any of the shows. And I would just like the rage within me
Yeah.
was so electric. And then you made the point that, we need those people on these
Yes.
shows. Otherwise, what
Yeah.
is this? What are we watching? We're not engaging. It's boring.
I think the fallacy, and Jeff Lewis said this the other day on his show, was that, I think in regards to the Real Housewives of New York cast of like, I want to get back to the fun and the friendship. And I'm like, no, you don't. Like, that's great if we have that. But we don't need Bryn level trauma and drama,
Mm.
but we do need we do need that character like a Lisa Barlow that is so resolute in their beliefs, even though they are so wrong sometimes,
Yeah.
they just hold true to that where it is so entertaining to watch. It is certainly a character. And, if you can look at it as just so humorous, like people watch, that's the other thing you learn is that people watch these shows in such different ways. People
Yeah.
watch them with a real big sense of humor and they're like, this is so insane, so funny, or they take it as gospel. They're like, this is so factual. I
Yeah.
should be upset about this. I should have a very strong opinion on Paige and Craig's breakup, and I should take a side, even though I've never met them and I will never talk to them in my life.
Yeah.
This is a personal friend at this point because that's
Yeah.
what they've created with the parasocial relationship.
Yes, totally. Absolutely. And I think, maybe I'm maturing. Is that what's happening to
No,
me?
no, no, no.
Can't be
That's,
possible.
yeah.
But, the way I'm watching it now is a little bit different. Like on Southern Charm, JT is someone who would have really gotten under my skin to the point of rage. And I would have been rage texting my friends about it and hating this guy. Like, what a
Yeah.
loser. He's so annoying. But I actually look at him now and I'm sort of giggling along, like, what are
Yeah.
you doing? You know?
Well, JT's this guy, and for those that don't watch Southern Charm, he is a newer character that got introduced last year, and he's one of those guys. He's a little. I call him Tiny Tim, and he's like small. I think he has like a chip on his shoulder about that, and he's trying to make moves. He's trying to like get some storyline going. He's trying to ingratiate himself in these really strong, already established male friendships, and also trying to figure out his way with the females. And he's one of the only people actually trying on that show because everybody's so used to the status quo. Is that this is Southern Charm is supposedly this show about men and women, but it really is about the men of Southern Charm and
Yeah.
their bad behavior and this toxic masculinity. And they'll then kind of shoehorn the women in Southern Charm. But
Yeah.
JT, like he was not in that original male friendship. So you see him on the outs, and the males kind of make fun of him of like, "What are you doing, dude?" Even though we've seen them as like exhibit the same behavior
Yeah.
in their earlier seasons. It's like he's the only guy in there trying, and I don't like I'm not one of those like, oh, I'd love to hang out with JT, but you have to appreciate that he's trying. It just
Yeah.
doesn't, it just is so glaring because nobody else is trying on that show as hard as he is.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you can see the moves. But yeah, we saw, sorry, to use my Australian pronunciation here, but we saw Craig, a
Craig,
Craig.
Crikey,
That's it.
Craig.
Craigie, mate. We saw him. I mean, he was, oh my God, I could not stand him in the first few years of Southern
Yeah.
Charm. He was trying so hard and desperate to keep up. He was the little JT because, Shep and Whitney, they were these old money, older guys, very sure of themselves, very sure of their place in the world. They didn't really need to be trying to get a career or anything going. And then he
And they would make
comes.
fun. They would make fun of
Yeah.
Craig. They
Yeah.
used to make fun of Craig. Shep would pick on Craig. And I
Yes.
think, I'm one of the people that read or listened to Craig Conover's book. And you really see that like that's from childhood. He got picked on as a kid too. So he
Oh,
has this
yeah.
real weird thing with getting picked on where you can see him like kind of lash out online as well or get his, that is also so funny. We all make like these silly memes, or I do. And you make them not thinking about the actual person behind that because that
Mm.
would, hopefully stop you from doing it. And
Yeah.
then you're like, oh, damn, these are real people. Or when I've gotten to meet them, you realize they are just real people, which also takes the fun away from it. You want to
Yeah.
treat them like these fictional characters when you
Yeah.
have to realize, like, oh, damn, they're real.
Yeah, totally. Although I have to say, I met Aisha from Below Deck
Oh, I
last year.
love her. She's
Love her
amazing.
too. But she's got that quality in real life that kept her still a little bit magical. She's really tall and just has this kind of, you know, she's kind of got that star quality, you know?
Yeah, she's effervescent. She's bubbly.
Yeah.
She you puts a smile on, even though when she's not. I mean, she handles herself. I mean, with a certain amount of grace and still being
Yeah.
hysterically funny. And
Yeah.
she is not. I could never see Aisha being a villain in any sort of like in terms of that like
No.
character archetype. But anytime she pops up, you're kind of drawn to her. She's
Yeah.
a magnet, which is there is. There's movie star quality and there's reality TV star quality. And I think she has that reality TV star quality.
Definitely, definitely. But yeah, it's interesting to watch the evolution of these people, and we're lucky enough to have been able to see so many of them, some of them not so much, but some of them really grow over the years, over the decade and a half that we've been watching them. And I
Yeah.
think Craig is one of those people. And I think that's obviously the crux of the issues at the moment that we're seeing on Southern Charm with him and his friends, and Austin not really feeling he's connecting with his old buddy in the same way. And that's okay. Like, I think we're allowed
Yeah.
to grow and change and
Friendships
also
have
feel
seasons
hurt.
as well. Friendships have
Yeah.
seasons, like and as you get older, like there are still like guys that I will say, "Oh, that's my best friend," like talking about somebody from high school or college.
Yeah.
And you also realize like and what like it is the concept of a best friend as you get older is so kind of silly in a way because
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I'm actively ranking friendships.
Yeah.
There's an Oscars of friendship, and you are the best. And the reality, like the reality as you get older is life gets busier, life gets crazier. Sometimes you don't talk to your best friend for a month or two
Yeah.
sometimes depending on
Yeah.
where they live. And so these like the Austin and Craig relationship is so funny because I think Austin so needs it, and Craig's like, if you want to come hang out in my backyard, my beautiful backyard, go for it, but I'm not going to the bars. And that makes him an asshole. That to them is like, how dare you not want to drink with me at a bar on King Street when, but also I think it's going to be interesting to see Craig's growth if it stalls or pushes forward in
Yeah.
terms of the Page breakup.
Yeah. So, I mean, the other thing I wondered about that, because, in your 40s, which is my age bracket, I I don't want to go hang out in the bars with my friends. I want to go to someone's amazing pool and hang out. So
Yes.
the only thing I was wondering is, does he live really far out of town that it's annoying to Uber there and back if you're drinking, or is that it?
Well, I mean, that must be it. It's just a time constraint issue where it's too
Yeah.
far away from these bars. But yeah, I mean, if I had a backyard like Craig's, I mean, I wouldn't be leaving either.
Me
And
neither.
aren't we supposed to not want to just go out and get wasted? Doesn't that mean we have something in our life that we're working towards? And that sometimes is not the most dynamic thing to watch on reality television of like, well,
Yeah.
this season my storyline is I'm maturing and I'm just gonna do a garden. Like nobody, it's
Yeah.
not nearly as exciting as it probably is to you when you're planting that garden in real life.
Totally. I mean, I'm not that interested in the snow peas, but I'm happy to like have a glance over if we just want to have a shot, in the background but it
Yeah.
doesn't need to be the key piece of what we're watching. No, I agree. But I think that show is really interesting because so much of it is the same. The girls have rotated, the cast has rotated since the dawn of time with that show, but the men have largely just stayed the same. What is going on with Whitney this season? It is like he's aged 25 years in the last year. What happened?
Well, I mean, Whitney is obviously an older man like he actually is aging, but I mean, he says in this last episode, which he was like clearly like wasted or some, I mean, he said he had jet lag, but he was
Mm,
just in that place where he was like just yelling out insults at Shep,
yeah,
which is like kind of funny to watch on television. But then at the same point, he seemed like kind of blackout where I was like,
yeah,
I'm worried about Whitney. Like
yeah.
and I know Whitney's a jet setter. He is out there producing. He's also a producer on Southern Charm,
Mm,
but he lives with his mom, even though he has now taken over the reins of their estate. But it's a very different lifestyle than how I grew up.
yeah,
And I love his mom, Miss Patricia, so much. And I sometimes wonder, you know, how I wonder what her worries and concerns are about her son, because I know, she wants him to get married, but she doesn't think that will happen anytime soon or potentially have a family. And, it's interesting. I would love for Miss Patricia to really talk openly and honestly about how she feels because,
yeah,
like the love between a mother and a son is so strong, but there are still concerns that I'm sure she has,
yeah.
especially when he's blackout on camera.
Yeah, and it's a little bit sort of Grey Gardens-ish, except that Whitney still goes out, but it's kind of, and I mean no
I'd love a
disrespect.
male version of Grey Gardens, like the
Yeah, that
male
would
version.
be amazing. But that's what I sort of see for him for the next, Miss Patricia's giving all of the information like this is how you clean the chandelier and you need every 3 months you need to water these plants in this particular way. And when they were sitting outside having a cigar at the other, when they had the dinner at her place the other night, I could just see, the plaster and the paint was kind of,
Yeah.
falling apart on the outside of the building. And it would be a huge amount. It's probably a very, very old
Oh
house that
yeah. I mean,
needs a lot of work and upkeep.
it's a
And
gothic manor in a sense,
yeah,
and I when she's so delicate in terms of like when she has people over for dinner, you always see like, oh, this sort of china, you got to
yeah,
have this napkin, this, and very specific. And I think there's, that's so amazing. But I just kept wondering if Miss Patricia is, at some, hopefully she'll live until she's 200. But if for some, if she does leave us one day, is Whitney going to keep up the
yeah,
silverware and the, those kind of traditions? I
yeah.
hope they don't go with Miss Patricia because it really is, I would love to have a dinner there
Maybe
and
he'll
see how
turn
she
it
does it.
into like a Graceland,
And
into
oh my God, that'd be,
a Southern
the
Charm
Bravo fandom,
Graceland.
but the
Yeah.
Bravo fandom would love that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think they could actually make a killing. And he could just have his man cave out the back and just spend his time like
Yeah.
Lisa Marie used to hide upstairs when the tours were on.
Yeah,
Just,
I read that book with her and her
yeah.
daughter, and it was so enlightening. I love that book.
Yeah. I don't know if you know about this about me, but I'm a huge, huge, huge Elvis fan. And,
I didn't.
actually to the creepy level, I have been, obsessed with Elvis over the last 25 years.
Well, I
And
read that book, and I went and listened to every Elvis album after I read that book or listened to that book. I think in November of this past year, and then I mean, I've heard so many Elvis albums through the years, but I went back album to album. And also, I was just so shocked about how many albums he had that were like 25 minutes in length. They were just
Yeah.
like they were just throwing them out there, and how many kind of C-level movies he was a part of because the
Yeah.
Colonel would just be like, let's get some money. And he was
Yeah.
just like roused about and clam bake and,
Yeah.
Elvis
Yep.
goes to Blue Hawaii.
Yeah. I mean, Blue Hawaii was one of the better ones, but there were
Yeah.
so many like D grade movies
But
that
you
he,
had even Blue Hawaii, like Ito Ita, like you had these kind
yes,
of like really
it's
funny
lame.
knockoff songs.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you listen to his gospel stuff from the 70s?
I did. Yeah, I
Oh,
did.
that I find that just so moving and beautiful. I feel like you're really listening to the soul of Elvis in that era for him. Um, but there's so much I could talk about. I just think that that book was incredible, and I think it's just such a tragedy. The echoes of tragedy throughout that entire family. I mean, from Elvis losing his mom at a young age in a sort of tragic way, and then Lisa losing her dad, and now Riley losing her mom and her brother in, completely untimely, terrible ways. It's just the intergenerational trauma is enormous in that family.
And then you throw success on top. I mean, not just success,
Yeah.
insane
The
success. Like,
pinnacle of, yeah,
truly superstar that the world had not really seen,
yeah,
a precursor to the Beatles and Michael Jackson and all of
yeah,
these people. And how what that does, obviously, to Elvis's psyche, but also his daughters and then her
yeah,
daughter. And
yeah.
it really, and then you watch something like Real Housewives of Beverly Hills this week with Sutton and her mom, where you
Mm,
see these family bonds and this family trauma. And it's darkly comic because I think we see a little bit of ourselves in these people. But then again, you're seeing this family that her dad had, killed himself, and
yeah,
the mom is a therapist, which is shocking, seeing
yeah,
how she treats people, but it's in that kind of Southern way of like,
yeah.
don't you tell me what to do.
Bless
And
your
Sut
heart.
yeah, and Sutton is trying to make inroads with her mother, but at the same time, you can tell holds like massive grudges against her for how she behaved, leading up to her dad's death and afterwards.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I love it when this real stuff, oh, here I go again. It's the grief and the trauma hook. I just can't help
Yeah.
myself, you know. But that
No, I thought
makes
that
it,
was such a great episode about grief and
yeah.
trauma. At first, I watched it and I was like, I think this is kind of a boring episode. And then I rewatched it and I was like, just there's so many layers to that if
Yeah.
you really let it kind of wash over you. And just watching this mother and daughter try to connect at all, or a daughter wanting to connect with her mother and her mother, having that, like, I'm 84 years old, I'll do what I damn well please, is really interesting. And then to have Garcelle and Kyle be witness to that, um, darkly comic, but highly moving as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what makes a show good. We love all the lightness and the fun. Although, to be honest, I'll tell you what I'm really sick of with all of these shows is the manufactured events and activities they have to do. I don't need to see
Yeah.
another ATV ride. I
Yeah.
don't need to see them doing any more, even zip lining. I don't care. Like,
Yeah,
okay, Mary Cosby was
the
funny,
tr
but
I don't need to see a rage room where they break stuff. I
no,
don't need to see a murder mystery party. The
no,
thing is, they're like, I'm good with just them on a couch. Like, let's just talk.
same.
Like,
Put
let's
them
on
on
a
a
talk.
couch.
And I understand from a production standpoint is that you think you need this visual stimulation, and sometimes you get great results from it. But the audience is so sophisticated nowadays that we are noticing the tropes. We
Yeah.
are, we're all. I have a big bug up my butt about flashbacks. I'm like, how dumb
Yes.
do you think we are? I don't need like you just flash back to something you showed us 15 minutes ago in the same episode. How dumb do you think I am that I need to legitimately see what I
Yeah.
just saw 15 minutes ago?
Yeah.
Sometimes they're used to great effect if they show us something from 4 or 5 years ago, but you're flashing back to things that I just watched. Like, were you
Yeah.
short on the edit and you needed to throw something in? Because I'm
Yeah.
watching scenes that I've already watched within this 43-minute period.
Absolutely. I've got a bit of a similar problem with Married at First Sight, Australia. You don't have
See,
the
I don't do
time.
maths.
You
I
don't
hear
you
it's
don't have
amazing.
time to get into this, Ryan. It's like 800 episodes that are
Yeah,
75
see,
hours long. It's a lot. It's a commitment.
That's what I
Um,
keep saying. I like if heaven exists, I hope they have a cloud service. If they can, if by the way, that's a really great way to advertise heaven. Like if you can watch your shows or the shows that you have not picked up yet, I
yeah,
think people would be a lot nicer to each other. I think they've
absolutely.
tried to get to heaven, be like, oh, I'll watch Law and Order finally. Like I can't watch Law and Order here. It's like 80 billion seasons. Why would I start now?
Absolutely. But they do a similar thing on maths where after, and I don't watch it live ever, of course. I record it and then I fast forward the ads. But after every ad, they replay, the whole scene that they played just before the ad, like
Yeah,
resetting the
yeah, yeah,
scene. And it's like, oh
yeah,
my God, for an hour and a half, this episode could be
yeah,
40 minutes long. It doesn't need
yeah.
to be 97.
Yeah,
Like,
no, it really is wild when you just they
yeah,
keep repeating, they keep, and I'm like,
yeah.
and by the way, we do have short attention spans, but how short do you think our attention spans are? And that's the thing where you'll be like really into something and it'll just like knock you out of it instead of like I always call it like letting the air out of the bag. Like keep
Yeah.
that tension in, like keep us like on top of it.
Yeah.
And also with commercials, you say you tape and fast forward. Like advertisers at this point, like, do they just kid themselves and
I
think that we're all
know.
watching the advertisements? Like they know we have these things that fast forward or even listening to
Yeah.
podcasts, like I don't, like there's a button where you can skip past the.
I
So when
know.
anybody complains about commercials, I'm like, there's buttons where you can
Yeah.
just completely skip through that.
That's
I don't want to
it.
give
That's
away the
it.
secret.
And some people are really beautiful at just doing a 30-second commercial. You can go skip once and there you go, pick right back up.
I'm not suggesting
Not
doing that
that
on
we would
either of our shows.
ever,
No, no, no,
exactly,
no. I,
never,
I
never.
love advertisers.
Absolutely. Okay, so Southern Hospitality. I know you're a
Yeah,
fan. I'm
I am. Yeah.
obsessed, obsessed, obsessed with it. Apparently, they just recorded the reunion.
Yeah.
And I know we're a little way off. We've got the whole season to go. I'm curious what your take is on Emmy. Her behavior at the moment is so alarming. It gives me huge internal anxiety. I'm watching her reacting to things in such a manic way. It's
Yeah.
like it's different. It's so different to the first season where there were some accusations then and she was gripping on really tightly to the relationship and the bubble and the protecting of all of that. But this is just on a level that is actually quite alarming to me. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
I think she's a great reality show character. Like we've had like three scenes where she's like mascara dripping down her face, which is always just iconic behavior, even though it's very, this is real
Yeah.
behavior. But yeah, there is a difference from previous seasons. And, she lets us know she's on a health journey. She's not drinking. But I would also maybe speculate and speculation obviously is dangerous, but I wonder also if there's Adderall involved, if there's
Yes.
other thing, because she seems so wound up. And
Yes.
also, I think obviously her relationship with Will, her whole life hinges on this relationship. So anything that she hears, she's not really hearing, as she so frantically wants this love that when
Mhm.
you hold on to something so tight, everything else, like you just treat everything so frantically.
Yeah.
And I think it is really amazing to watch. That's why one of the aspects that makes this show great. But I already can tell, and this is also the beautiful thing about watching young kids in their
Yeah.
20s, is that you're like, oh, 5 years from now, you are going to have a whole different story. You are going to
Mhm.
have life is going to happen and you're going to look back on this. And it is one of those things you don't realize when you're in your 20s that
Yeah.
you're like, that's what makes the show good, is that everything is life or death, even though it's like, it's going to be okay. It's
Yeah.
potentially going to be okay.
Yes.
Like you're growing up, and it sounds
Yeah.
so demeaning when I say it. I'm not talking down to anybody,
Mm.
but there is this element. But that's what makes it good, is that these are life or death scenarios in their eyes,
Mhm.
and that's what I think makes it good, because it's like there's something we recognize from our youth and how much
Yeah.
we held on to things and needed things to work. And that's what, like, the
Absolutely.
essence of her is like needing this to
Yeah.
work. Her happiness all hinges on this one man
Mhm.
who
It's
doesn't
yeah.
seem to care, by the way. Like, he doesn't
No.
seem to be able to talk to her in a real way, but he also seems to, if you go by any of the rumors, really cheat on her a lot.
Yeah. I mean, do you believe the rumors?
I mean, obviously, sometimes when there's smoke, there's fire. I sometimes find it hard to believe if you've been called out once that you would continue that thing. And
Mm.
also, I do think there is this, I think men, especially for being so strong, we are so weak and we can't have tough conversations we don't know because we're like hurt bad. We hurt somebody bad. Oh no. And we can't do, I mean, I've had that in the past where you're like, oh, I just can't. I mean, and I guess that's really self-serving and narcissistic in a sense. But I don't know. Like I would want to believe, well, he should just go be in another relationship. Like
Mm.
he should just go do that. I don't know. And I don't know if he's ever going to be honest on camera about it. But it's one of those great reality show mysteries. Will
Yeah.
he get caught?
Will he get caught? And that's right. And I think if I think back to the relationships of my 20s, oh God, they were explosive. I was, partying and having a great time and probably reacting completely differently than I would now. And so there is that element. But I also think going back to your earlier point about the people that have grown up watching reality TV, Southern hospitality feels like it's this incredible little bubble of completely unaffected reality stars. I don't feel like they're self-producing in the same way that we see housewives coming on and doing that.
Well, if you're talking about Southern hospitality, I think it's because they're not stars yet. They're on a reality television show,
Yeah.
but they have not achieved the stardom of people on Southern Charm, people on Vanderpump Rules. They're getting there, but I think that's also what makes it good. Like I talked to a couple of the cast members on the show a couple of weeks ago, and they were like calling from their apartments. They're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, we have to go to work tonight. Like we have to go in and
Yeah.
work the bar." And like that, there's something so refreshing about people that still need to make a paycheck every 2 weeks.
Yeah. I
Like
completely
that's where I
agree.
think that reality comes in of like, I would so much rather watch those people than those kind of, when we got a little questionable with Vanderpump Rules, when they kept
Hmm.
lying to us that they were actually working there, when it was
Yeah.
like, no, you're doing this, you're showing up for a couple of weeks when they're shooting, but
Yeah.
you've got enough money to not have to work full time at Sir anymore.
Yeah, but I think, from a cultural perspective, these kids that we're watching, and again, that I don't mean that, to put them down, but they are compared to me, they're kids.
Yeah.
They have grown up with the world of reality TV, but they still seem unaffected. So we'll have people come into the housewife sphere who have not got any fame, are seeking the fame. And like, Bronwyn Newport, we had no idea who she was. And she came on and she was being a housewife. She had it all in her mind already. Whereas I just don't feel like we're seeing that, even though it's the same thing. They're coming out of nowhere, these hospitality kids, and they could absolutely be doing the influencer and the
Yeah.
self-producing and the same with New York, the whole new cast. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but they were nobody to us before that show. And they came on and they were acting absolutely like housewives and thinking they were getting away with it. But the authenticity is still there with hospitality
Yeah.
um, that makes it so good.
It's lightning in a bottle. I mean, it really, I mean, and that's what I would imagine is so frustrating to be a producer on one of these shows because you can never guarantee the results. And the audience will call you out really quickly if it feels forced, if the characters feel forced. Like, and you can usually deal with one or two forced characters, but you need some sort of reality like to hinge it all on with like
Mm.
real people that you see something in. And you either get that or you don't. And that's why, like, as you grow older, like there have been so many seasons that I'm like, well, I just recapped a whole nother season of Salt Lake City. You're seeing the years of your
Yeah.
life go by and you're judging them through housewife seasons. And you're like, well, we got through that and we'll see you next season, which I would
Yeah.
imagine is what a sports fan feels like. I'm not into sports, but,
Yeah.
like, oh, we're in the off season now. And um, I think there is, I don't know how you keep producing real reality television. Like, but I will say it's all about investing in real relationships.
Yes.
That's why Scandal hit as hard as it did because we were with them for 11 years. We
Yeah.
invested in these people and we knew at that point their relationships were real or as real as they could be for television. So when
Mm.
something really popped off, that's why I always say you have to invest in these characters because you might have two bad seasons, but at least they know each other well enough. When something crazy happens in one of their life, they will have relationships where it will pop off and it'll be fireworks all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And I think you saw a little bit of that in Salt Lake City this past season. They all were so comfortable with each other that they were able to just get nuts. But yeah, you want that. I mean, people always ask me, where do you want to see a new Housewives iteration? Like, what
Mm.
state, what city? Do you want Chicago? And it's like I always say, I don't care about that. I just want real relationships. If you can give me a group of friends that have 5 to 10 years of experience with each other, and then, so we're not watching a season like with the RHONY reboot where we watch them get to know each other, which is a
Yeah.
huge waste of our time. But
Yeah.
you're investing in them. I'd rather know like these people, like, oh, Veronica. Oh, God. Well, you don't know Veronica and me. We go back 10 years. She hit me once 8 years ago, and we've gotten through it, but we're still, like, if you already
Yes.
have that, it's so much of the work is already done for you. And then the audience feels like they're voyeurs. Like I'm seeing already established relationships. That's so exciting because the audience is so smart. We'll pick up on things or like a silence or a reaction shot. And I think if they know each other, you'll get so much more of those. And that's why I think Roni fell flat for like a season and a half. And, I think it'll come back for a third season. And it could be good because now they do seem like they hang out with each other and they have a language with each other if they're able to do another season.
But how do we get past the self-producing and the pranks and the fake manufactured storylines? How do we get them just to talk to us about what's actually happening in their lives and their relationships? Is that longevity of the relationships the thing that's missing that they don't have to fall back on? So they have to come up with pranks and
I think that's it. I think people think they're smarter than producers and they're smarter than the audience. I think
mm,
Bryn fell victim to that this past season, because she's so
yeah,
quirky and funny and I know what works. And
sexy.
you never, I mean, you want the ideal reality television star is somebody that doesn't need to be there
Hmm.
and somebody that truly just is almost oblivious to how they come off.
Yeah,
So they're not trying to produce. And I don't know enough about like that's the dream as I get further into this is that I want to like shadow a producer on set on one of these shows. Like what's
yeah.
the day to day? What are the conversations that's happening? How seriously are you taking these storylines? Because I think sometimes we talk about it with such intensity and fervor that you're like, are they talking about it as intense as we are? You want to believe they are, but sometimes you're like, I don't think they are. I think they're
Yeah.
just trying to get home to their families, you
Yeah.
know?
So, well, that's right. Are they just filming them for whatever the schedule is and then putting the story together later? And did they have such little content that they really just had to scrap together bits of nothing for this season that we just watched?
Well, allegedly, how it works is that they'll, obviously there's a shoot schedule. They have people that they hire. So they know who's going to be in the scenes. So if it's like Bryn, Uba, and Aaron, they say, okay, you're showing up at this restaurant at 3 p.m. We'll mic you up. We've already lit the scene, and producers will probably talk to them beforehand of like, did you hear what Aaron said about you, Uba? And what do you think about that? And they might get that in a talking head shot. So leading into that, they're hoping to get something and they'll probably shoot for an hour or two and see what they get. And from what I hear is that goes into like a camera truck. They'll have somebody taking notes of everything that is said. That'll get passed down to the producers. They'll break it into A, B, and C storylines for each episode. This is what we got. This is what we got. This is what we got. And you'll communicate every day and try to piece this episode or this season together like a puzzle, which is really exciting. And I just don't think on New York they had enough actual sparks, so they relied on stupid games or pranks or dodgeball or just stuff that we didn't need.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I would love, and the sad thing is, we will never know because I think, producers aren't inclined just to give us all and tell us all.
Yeah. Yeah. They really need to. Maybe that would be what would help get it back on board if they actually just did a mea culpa. I'm like, you know what? This is what we tried. This is what we had. And guess what? Now we're coming in with a new season with new friends, and this is what it's going to look like. Because I don't know that they're going to do what the fans want, which seems to be to cut them all and bring back the old cast. I mean, I would love that, but maybe that is a different show. But if they brought in some genuine long-term friends, like who are Erin's lifelong friends from New York?
Yeah.
She grew up in New York, in the
Yeah.
city. Where are her best friends? And where are, not that I necessarily wished that hell upon her real friendships, but that's the kind of thing that would bring it back to life, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, even like in Summer House, which just premiered, you have them acknowledging Sierra. Sierra talks about, oh, I just came off filming The Traitors.
Yeah.
That was so intense. We were all crying, and now I'm going into the Summer House. So automatically, the audience already has a language for where this character has been. We
Yes.
know that she had this weird relationship with Wes Wilson last season, so they're going to have an awkward interaction. So half of a little piece of the work is already done for the producers. We already have a real relationship that we are going to get a reaction, like a back to school, where you show up the
Yeah.
first day of school and see everybody. So we already know that we need to capture this moment of them seeing each other. So we need to get a shot of that. We already have Wes on camera, like, are you nervous? Like, oh, yeah, I am kind of nervous. So we know that. We
Yeah.
also know that Lindsay, we have information as producers that she's pregnant, but the rest of the cast don't know. So we already know we're going to
Yes.
get that. And we need to get reactions from everybody. We also know to tell Carl to come a day later, or, just because that news is going to be revealed, we want
Yeah.
to we want to give Carl a little respect to not be in that intense of a situation, to let him have a day to sit on it. But we need to get that camera immediately on Carl. We need to get him mic'd up as soon as that car pulls in.
Yeah.
So with Summer House, you got 9 seasons in and you already have so much to work with because
Yes.
these are relationships that have already started. And then it takes it's not as heavy to lift when you're introducing new characters. Like we had a couple new characters in Summer House, which
Hmm.
are like really young girls.
Oh, yeah.
So you can do a quick intro of them and go, okay, she's flirting with Jesse Solomon. So that's a storyline right there. But we're so enveloped in the people that we've watched for 9 seasons. I don't
Yeah.
know. So for me, like that, you're in this, half of your job is already done for you because you're just relying on real relationships.
Yeah. And on the one hand, I love being in on it. And we knew all of this stuff about Lindsay and Carl breaking up long before we actually saw it on TV. We knew about the pregnancy and her new boyfriend and all of that. And she already had her baby, and we're watching her revealing that she's pregnant to the cast. But
Yeah.
so part of me almost wishes we didn't have the full picture. And I know you've talked about this before with them revealing everything in interviews and podcasts, and we're getting fed information that's leaking as the show's filming. So we're all always really ahead of what we're then watching. And sometimes it works, but sometimes I feel like, oh, like I already know. I don't
Yeah.
feel the
It,
excitement of Lindsay revealing her pregnancy because we already know that everyone knows and supports her.
it's hard to combat. And I imagine that's just, in the last decade, something that producers really have to have an eye towards of, the audience being so far ahead of the
Mm.
actual show. And, last night is a perfect example on Summer House. At the very end, they show a trailer for the season. And at the very last part, they added a little scene where they acknowledge that they picked up cameras after Paige and Craig's breakup. And we have Paige saying, he wants to make me look bad, paint me out as a cheater. I caught him talking to two bitches during our relationship.
Mm.
And I just thought, first off, that's going to ignite the fan base. People are going to go crazy on both sides, pro Craig, pro Paige, pro Craig. But
Yeah.
then we have to wait until the end of the season for them to pick up cameras and find out the rest of that conversation.
Yes.
Like that's the part where you're like, what the hell? Like we're going to
Yes.
have to live with this storyline for the next 4 months to
Yeah.
find out the rest of that conversation. And
And
I
maybe
don't know. I don't know how you combat that?
no, and maybe that's the end of the conversation and we'll be totally let down, you
Exactly.
know?
Well, they do that too. The way they edit things, they make these things look like such a huge deal, and then they show them,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, that's it. Like the next line Paige says is, oh, but it was nothing. Like, we had to
Yeah.
wait 4 months to hear that it was nothing when we all made something so huge out of it.
Exactly, exactly. And I do think this, again, it's a bit of a Lindsay and Carl. We're going to be looking out for all the Easter eggs and looking at things with a different lens, watching that relationship breaking down. But I think people already had their eyes on this relationship in that sort of way, where we were looking at things and wondering, where does this go? We're having the same conversation every season about who's going to live where and does she really want the same things as him? And now we're really going to know the end of the story and potentially watch it unfold. But I'm concerned that we're not going to get much of a picture. Like, I don't think Paige is someone who is really going to let us go there. And there's that one scene where she's in the preview, we see she's crying with Sierra about a hypothetical breakup and what that would mean for her. But I don't know that we're going to really get inside her thought process as this goes
Yeah.
along.
I've said this about Paige now many times is that she is very witty, very smart, but she's also somebody that is so comfortable in that position of commenting on other cast members and
Yes.
doing it with laser-like precision and humor, which is
Hmm.
so like, oh my God, people just love Paige for that. But when she has the hot potato herself, like you're going to have to deal with your issue and the camera's going to be on you talking about it. I am very curious to see what Paige's level of being comfortable in those situations are because I think she likes to be in control at all times. And
Yeah.
by the way, I'm not saying that as a bad thing. That's
Yeah.
something to look up to. I mean, like, man, I want to be in control of my life too. Like,
Yeah.
so to have something out of control and to really share something very deeply personal, because up to this point, the only thing this relationship has shared is that I don't know if I want to move to Charleston. I don't know if I'm ready to have a baby. And we've seen that same conversation for 3 years.
Hmm.
So now we're adding this whole other level of their actual reality. Like Craig said
Yeah.
last episode of Southern Charm, we don't really fight. So if you don't really fight,
Mhm.
she tells you you're like breaking up. You didn't take that as like whoa, because he was like, I think she didn't mean it. She was just having a bad day. If you
Yeah.
never fight and so your partner says we're breaking up, that's more than just like, well, sleep on it. Like
Yeah.
that
Totally.
would be hysteria.
Yes.
Um, but it's like it's the reality, like PK and Dorit on Beverly Hills. They've always kind of like had this relationship of like getting along and I love you, Dorit, and yeah, all of
Hmm.
this. But then we just find out in this season that he's potentially a horrible father.
Yeah.
He's there, he's gone weeks at a time. He doesn't answer her text messages. He's threatening her with like
Mhm.
legal filings about their house and all, just kind of they even have this scene where PK's like, and the we would be at each other's throats in front of people. And I'm like, we've never seen it on the show.
Mhm.
So all of a sudden, you realize that they've presented this false image of themselves as a couple, even though the audience, we've always kind of suspected something weird. They've never shown us. And Dorit's having such an insanely strong season because she's finally being somewhat open with us,
Yeah.
which just goes to show all these characters be open, even if you're scared. Even like we got you. Like the audience it's a gigantic trust fall. Like fall
Yeah.
into our arms, open up. You're gonna like it's gonna endear you to us. But it is wild because obviously this has been going on for years. And it's really one of the reasons why I think Dorit's had some really horrible seasons because
Yeah.
if you're not being wildly open and
Authentic.
honest,
Yeah.
yeah, then I think the audience really feels that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing that makes us love all of those other characters. Like, again, back to Salt Lake, all of them seem to be completely authentically themselves. And that's what makes us connect and, you know, champion them. So maybe that's the thing we need to see in all of these new seasons and iterations of these shows. We just need real, authentic connections and real and authentic representations of their lives. I mean, we don't need everything. Like you
Yeah.
put a lot on the line on your show, and I heard you talk about this the other day. You share a lot of vulnerabilities as a podcaster, but there would be plenty that nobody knows about. And
Oh, yes,
every
exactly.
and your
I mean,
audience connects with you in a real
yeah.
way because you do share things and you are vulnerable, but you can also still have a private life. And
Oh, 100%. I don't really, I've learned not to talk about my relationship. I've learned not to, like I think I've talked about things in the past and sometimes I've even gone too far and been like, oh, that's not good. Or, like that's somebody else's business, which is
mm,
wild. You just get so used to it. And
yeah,
the relationship I have with the audience is probably one of the strongest relationships I have in my life. So if I'm going through some kind of rough time, I can just be like, or even on the Beverly Hills this week, I just was like thinking so much about my mom passing away. Like
mm,
I was thinking so much and I was sharing like these different stories. And you sometimes like, God, that's maybe I shared too much. Maybe I went too far. And I don't know. Like, I don't know the right answers. This isn't normal what we do.
yeah,
It's not normal to sit in front of a mic every day and talk about these
yeah,
shows. Like there's no kind of textbook on how you should handle any of this
yeah,
because on one hand you could say, well, this is extremely sad. This is a grown man that is so involved in these shows. It is very, but then you could look at it on the other hand of like, wow, this is so unique. It is
yeah,
so like who would have ever thought? And this is this is a guy just trying to get through his day, but he obviously has this deep passion for pop culture and television. And it's
yeah.
really how you frame it.
I have to say though, as a long time listener of your show, I think that's the thing. that people really do love about you. First of all, your knowledge and expertise in the pop culture world is why we came, because of the way that you talk about all of this stuff. I connect with you because of how you break things down, and I agree with you. And sometimes I don't agree, but I love your
Yeah.
takes. And then it's the vulnerability. And I think everyone listening would agree that when you're sharing things about how you feel about losing your mum and the what you went through, that was such a long and painful time for your family. If you didn't share that, how could you possibly have shown up like, hey guys, welcome back to
Oh,
So Bad It's Good.
I don't.
Everything's great.
I wouldn't have been able to do the show. Like I wouldn't have been able to
No.
keep it going if I wasn't able to be somewhat open about that. And
Yeah.
but it's also so funny. Like I was talking with I was in therapy yesterday, and I got to tell you, it wasn't fun. Like if listeners could like listen or watch that, they'd be like, this isn't entertaining. This is not fun. Like, there's an element of being able to talk in this fashion where you can also say, well, it is still kind of fun. Even when there's
Yeah.
vulnerability, we're still kind of trying to make it somewhat humorous or somewhat relatable. But in therapy, sometimes I'll just sit there and be like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing,
Yeah.
and I'm just so tired of it. Like you
Yeah.
just, it's not nearly as entertaining. Like sometimes I'll be like, should I put a mic in front of this therapy session just to make it really like sing?
Make it pop. No, but
Yeah, exactly.
but that's the thing. Like, obviously, therapy is meant to be a confidential space where you can be as boring and sad and whatever you need to be in that moment. And then the mic is when you're on and you can give a snapshot and you can say it beautifully, like you just did. Yesterday was an absolute train wreck and so depressing and boring in therapy. No one would have wanted to listen to it. Well, that's exactly the
Yeah.
point, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, but and by the way, I'm glad, like, by the way, I get out of that. I'm so glad I did it. I'm so
Yeah.
glad to get that, but that's what I'm saying. It's real life is sometimes never as entertaining as being able to do a podcast or watch these shows, nor should
Yeah.
it be. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be like, wow, I should put this out for public consumption. Like some things
Yeah.
are private, like some
Yeah.
thoughts are private, and it is really up to you to delineate what that is. And that's why I would never be good on a reality television show. I would be
Yeah.
too guarded. I'm not comfortable with myself in some ways. I would second guess myself the entire time. I would doubt. I would be like, oh my God. And I would also just think the whole season, what is the one thing that
Yeah.
I'm insecure about that the audience is going to pick up on immediately? Because
Yeah.
they'll see it immediately. They'll be like,
Yeah.
this guy, holy shit, he is completely insecure that he's going to fail for the rest of his life. Like they'll
Yeah.
call you out on it.
Yeah.
And I just can't imagine how that interacts with your psyche.
Oh, totally. I'd be exactly the same. I'd be overthinking absolutely everything. I'd be so conscious. And then, I can get carried away and blurt things out and then just be like, oh my God, what did I just say? What did I say? I just
Yeah.
I wouldn't cope even on one episode, it would haunt me forever. So, but that's okay. The world needs different people
Well, that's why
and
I'm always like with the ladies at the end of the season for Housewives, I'm always like, thank you for your service. Like,
yeah,
thank you. Thank you for
yeah,
doing, like, you're like evil Knievels of the
yeah,
reality show world where you're out there walking a tightrope. You
yeah,
don't know how the audience is going to interact with it. And also, you're going to be a villain one season and you're going to be a hero 2 seasons down the line. You just got to
totally.
hold on.
Yeah,
And, we always compare it to our own lives. I always say, man, I had a shitty season of my life 2 seasons ago.
yeah,
Horrible season, if you're
yeah,
looking at it as a reality show. And
yeah.
still, we're in a pretty bad season right now, but hopefully next season is going to be a great season.
Yeah,
Like I
you're on your
really
way out.
shine next season. Yeah,
Yeah, you're on
exactly.
your way out. But I think that's a really interesting thing. And I think most people probably reflect on it in terms of their own lives. And that's why we love this stuff. And although, just as I'm saying this, do you think there actually are people out there in the world who are genuinely just watching this in one go and not thinking about it? Like, are
A
they just
hundred
like, that was fun?
percent. 100%. That's what at the very beginning, I said we all watch it in different ways. Like, we're dissecting it. I also watch, like, I'll watch it a couple of times. And one, I'll watch it and
Yeah,
I'll see all the humorous aspects and I'll laugh. The next time, I'm really looking at like the whole overall arc
yeah,
and, the character motivations. And some people just watch it and they
yeah,
take it hook, line, and sinker. Oh,
yeah,
Sandoval said he didn't cheat. Well, he didn't cheat then. He said he didn't cheat. Like whatever somebody says, they take it as gospel,
yeah,
even though they've watched season after season. And those people, it's really interesting, but it just shows you not how divided we are, but that we all, like you said earlier, like you'll listen to me and you'll disagree with me. we all have different opinions. Nobody's opinion is better than somebody else's opinion. Like
Yeah.
have have faith in your opinion, but it also doesn't have to be the only one. There,
Yeah.
you don't have to have like an ego about opinions about reality
Yeah.
shows. Like,
Yeah.
oh, he's like, hell yeah, disagree with me. Why do you disagree? Like, that's
Yeah.
exciting to me.
Yeah. Although to be fair, I don't disagree with you that often. It's generally more if I feel like you're being a bit too soft on someone that I would actually be
I get
raging
that.
about.
I get that too. But also, I
Yeah.
think that's also just life. Like, I'm so much
Yeah.
softer this year than I was 2 years ago.
You're in
At
your
the heart of
soft
Scandal,
era.
I was so, yeah, I'm a soft boy like Craig Conover. But at the same time, I think what it is that not life has beaten me down, but, dealing with the death of my mom and dealing with some of these other things that I've this last year and a half, it has changed certain perspectives of mine.
Mm.
And at the end of the day, I'm just like, guys, we all fuck up royally. Like we all watch these shows like we're these like perfect people. Like that's what like
Yeah.
we watch these shows like we've never lied to somebody, we've never done something bad. When everybody, like
Yeah.
you've done something in your life, you've been out of control at one point. You have. And we always just forget that. And we're the judge, jury, and executioner, myself included.
Yeah.
And then I'll be like, look how many times I've royally screwed up in my life. Like just royally. I can diagnose these people on reality television, but
Yeah.
I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like, and
Yeah.
so I think that has proven to be, I'm really in my head more now than I've ever been, just because I'm like,
Mm.
oh God, like just sometimes you realize people are just trying to get by. Like we just got
Yeah.
to get through the day.
Yeah. Wow.
By
So
the way,
you
your audience has to think I'm insane by now. I realize
absolutely
that.
not. Everybody listening already loves you, so you don't
I thought
worry
you're like
about that.
everybody's listening's already turned it off, so we're good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just you and me now. I did tell a friend that you were coming on the show, and she's so wildly excited. And she said to tell you that you're sounding really good, and that
The
post
sinus
surgery you're
surgery.
sounding
Yeah.
really much more like yourself. And she wanted you to know
Yeah.
that.
Thank you. I'm going for my final cleaning next Wednesday where they put this huge tube up your nose
Oh my
and they
God.
like numb it and all of these crazy things come out of your sinus cavities. It has
Oh,
been they warned me it was going to be intense, but I really still didn't think it would be this as intense as it
yeah.
was. I thought
Yeah.
I'd be like, yeah, I'll be podcasting the next day, even they told me I wouldn't be for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it really was a true shocker. But tell your friend, thank you. Thank you for
I
their concern.
will. Well, she'll listen. I'll leave this in and Emma, you can enjoy that little
Emma,
comment.
what up?
So, okay. So I know, have you got a few more minutes? Is that okay
I've
to?
got about like 8 minutes. I've just got to, because
Okay.
I'm on for another. Anyways, yeah, I got
Okay.
about
All
eight
right.
minutes if
Well,
that's okay.
just really quickly, you are in LA and I
Yeah.
am a big fan of, well, a big fan. That sounds terrible. I've been following the Menendez brothers
Oh, yeah.
situation closely, and they've now got a date for a new or the resentencing trial, I think in March 2021. What do you think the vibe is there? I mean, I'm feeling like what I'm reading, I don't know if you're keeping up with it, but the DA there doesn't seem that favorable. And I don't
It
know.
it was. I mean, well, first off, the vibes are immaculate with the Menendez brothers. No, it's really interesting because they rode that wave of the Ryan Murphy Netflix
Yeah.
series, which was a big hit for. But there's like a real moment that they had to capitalize on it within a certain amount of time because once again, our attention spans, something will be really hot for like 3 weeks and then we forget about it entirely. So
Yeah.
the Menendez brothers and their family have been trying to get them out for so long. So they were trying to capitalize on this, but then it intersected with our elections. So we
Mm.
have a different DA than we did when it was looking really good for the Menendez
Yeah.
brothers because Gavin Newsom was either it was going to go across his desk and he could do an official pardon, or the DA with new evidence was going to potentially reopen and resentence. But then we elected a new DA that is definitely not in favor of the Menendez brothers. So it's this real wild thing where it's like they truly might have missed their shot again if they had pushed a little harder before those elections. Because it was looking really good for them. And even Kim Kardashian got involved. Like the
Yeah.
new season of the Kardashians premiered last week, which is weird because nobody's really talking about it, which is kind of refreshing. But Kim's even like, I met the Menendez brothers, and Chris is like, I used to know them, and I was like, oh, of course you did.
Yes.
And Kim goes and visits the Menendez brothers as part of her prison reform campaign. But it's so, I mean, if you want to talk about such a bizarre reality show that's turned into, because
Yeah.
two of them are billionaires. Kim's talking about prison reform, and then you're intersecting scenes with like their new mansion in Malibu and all. It's
Yeah.
such a weirdly put together show where you're like, it's it vacillates from like totally vapid to something we're supposed to take completely serious. And so
Yeah.
it comes off like a comedy
Yeah.
that I don't think they mean it to. But I mean, listen, I don't think they're going to get out. I don't think,
Really?
I mean, unless they can find a way to kiss Trump's ass. If those Menendez brothers can tell Donald Trump that he's an amazing, strong, powerful man,
Yeah.
maybe we'll get a Trump pardon if he thinks it's going to get some kind of attention. I'm half joking, but half
Yeah.
of it, you never know. By the way, the Tiger King, which we had that Netflix docuseries,
Yes.
he's out there tweeting up a storm in prison. He tweets Donald
Yes.
Trump all the time, like, free Joe Exotic, Donald. I love you. And part of me, it's like, well, on a crazy day, if Donald Trump needs picking up, he'll
Yeah.
maybe go like, you know what, I'll let him out. Like that's like
Yeah.
you
They
never
just need to
know, but
make
I
another
think,
season of it, and then, it's hot enough that it might happen.
oh my God, it would be, oh, would a second, well, that, because I thought they were going to get out, and then I thought we were going to see one of them on Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah. Oh, for
I was
sure. And
like,
they'd have a podcast and they'd be
of course they'll
huge,
have a podcast. And that's
huge, huge, huge.
the weird intersection between pop culture and true crime and reality television, because we have
Yeah.
Gypsy Rose Blanchard, which I don't know if you get
Hmm.
that reality show over there,
Yeah.
which is like Gypsy Rose Love After Lockup. And, this is a person that was involved in the killing of their mother. And
Yeah.
they're having like Vanderpump Rules storylines. Like
Yes.
she like gets divorced from her husband that she
Yeah.
met in prison and then goes back to her other prison boyfriend
Yeah.
that she had years earlier. And I'm like, this is like a little Outback Vanderpump Rules storyline.
Totally.
And we're like, I loved watching it, but then I would have to like, oh dude, this person was involved in like a brutal murder.
Yeah.
It's really bizarre. And
Yeah.
the more we blur those lines and take those safeguards off, I truly believe we will see a full reality show set in prison. Like, why
Yeah.
not put a camera crew in there and follow the Menendez brothers around?
Absolutely. Watch them, watch their journey. But I mean, it does make you question as well, like what are the rules? Like why is Gypsy out? I guess the Menendez brothers were way more violent and they personally did it themselves. But, here in Australia, people are out after murdering people very, very quickly. You do not spend 35 years in a lot of cases. There are children that get murdered and the person gets 5 years. So,
Really?
yes, yes. We're outlaws out here. It's terrible.
Yeah. Wait, can I ask? This is so interesting. I've noticed this. Like, one of the bigger listenerships I have for my show is in Australia.
Hmm.
Why is that? Like, I always am curious because, and by the way, I'm not talking this, like, I'm talking, I'll get letters. Like, I'll get people emailing me, like, oh my God, this and this and this, and like
Yep.
really passionate letters about what they've gone through in their life. And it's like, it's always from Australia. What is
Really?
it? I'm just so curious. Is it like, is Australia just a huge like American reality show podcast market, or is it something like, is there something about me in particular? Like, I'm so
Well,
curious because I don't, I
yeah,
was trying to figure it out.
it's a good question. I always thought I was the only person in the entire country that watches Bravo, and probably for a long time I really was. I used to get my CDs from eBay. Remember, I found that person who
Yeah,
burned me
yes,
those
yes,
shows,
yeah, yeah.
and I legit felt like the only person. But now I think it's much more mainstream, and I think people really genuinely are hooked into it in the same way that you and I are. And Ryan, you're an excellent, excellent professional in your field, and people connect with you because, as we said before, you share those vulnerabilities, and we've all been through stuff like you, and you do it in a beautiful way that connects really, really well with people. So that's probably it.
I've never been to Australia, so I want to do a live show in
Okay,
Australia because I'm
live show in
like, you know what?
Australia.
If I was like, if I get enough of these letters, I can just make them all come to the show, and then I can like go
Yes.
to Australia and see Australia. You know?
Absolutely. If you need me to MC, I'm
Yeah,
in.
you can guest we can do the whole thing. So it would be really
Uh,
exciting.
let's get a petition to get Ryan Bailey here in
Yeah,
Australia.
by the way,
But-
I've not committed any crimes, so it shouldn't be a problem getting me there. Like I don't think there would be anything
Oh,
that stops me
well, commit some
coming into the
crimes. You'll
country.
still you'll still have no problem.
Yeah, by the way,
Yeah.
it seems like I could kill somebody in Australia and I would get like barely any time.
Just a
So
few
that would
years,
be
it's
great.
fine. Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, you'd
just
probably get out on bail. Don't worry. That we like to let people out on bail so they can keep reoffending. So, you
truly
know,
the bad boy of podcasting. Yes.
yes. Oh, Ryan, I could talk with you for hours and hours and
I
hours.
know, I know. That's why you got to come on in the next couple of weeks on my show, and we can continue the conversation.
I would love to. And let's keep it away from grief and trauma and crime potentially next time.
How do you though? I mean, I think that's so ingrained in everything that we talk about. So it's
Yeah.
not like I think there were high highs in this show as well as sad moments. It's what you want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, Ryan, for everyone listening, they need to go and catch you on So Bad It's Good with Ryan Bailey. Instagram is your best place. You're not
Yeah,
doing
Instagram so
TikTok and
bad it's good
all.
with Ryan Bailey. I'm not really, I used to make way funnier memes, but my sense of humor is kind of shot this year. So I'm looking to find that voice again, but it'll
Yeah.
be there. I'm not really pressuring myself. But if you want to, that's where you follow me on Instagram. We're up on YouTube. We got a Patreon. We got anything. There's too much. So just go check out whatever you want.
Absolutely. Go and support the Patreon. That is how Ryan makes his money. And we need more Ryan. So
Oh, well.
let's get there. And then let's get that. Come on, Aussies, let's get Ryan
Yeah.
here
Come
on
on.
our
Yeah.
shores. All right.
Start a petition. Yeah.
I'm gonna manifest that for even, later this year, Ryan. Let's make it happen.
Okay. Yeah. That's actually
Yeah?
a good plan of action.
A nice goal for the end of this year, potentially.
Yeah.
We've just got to get through the shitstorm first. Oh, thank you so much, Ryan. Such a
Great talking to
blast
you.
having you here as always.
Thanks everybody for listening.